The U.S. Air Force's X-37B spaceplane has been zipping around Earth since May 2015 while it performs a number of hush-hush activities. The current mission is the fourth for the robotic X-37B, which is also known as the Orbital Test Vehicle. The other three OTV flights launched in April 2010, March 2011 and December 2012. Here are a few surprising facts about the military spaceplane. It's tiny. The X-37B looks a lot like NASA's iconic space shuttle, but the two types of vehicles don't resemble each other in size. The X-37B is just 29 feet equivalent to 8.8 meters long, with a wingspan of 15 feet equivalent to 4.6 meters. The now retired Space Shuttle orbiters, by contrast, were 122 feet equivalent to 37 meters long, and measured more than 78 feet equivalent to 24 meters from wingtip to wingtip. Two X-37Bs could fit inside the shuttle's cavernous payload bay. Indeed, the X-37B's designers originally envisioned the shuttle carrying the smaller spaceplane to orbit but ultimately decided that launching the X-37B atop a rocket would be more economical. The X-37B currently rides to orbit aboard United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket. Like the Space Shuttle, the X-37B lands on a runway, plane style, but does everything autonomously, in contrast to the piloted shuttle, which usually carried a crew of 7 astronauts. Its missions are classified. Although the Air Force has disclosed some of the payloads that have flown to orbit on the X-37B, most of the spaceplane's onboard gear is classified, as are the details of its orbital activities. This secrecy has led to some speculation that the vehicle is some sort of space weapon, perhaps one designed to take out or capture satellites. However, the Air Force has always denied this notion, insisting that the X-37B is just testing out technologies for future spacecraft, and carrying various experiments up to space and back. Some of these technologies being tested may be sensors and other equipment for future spy satellites, outside experts have said. It has NASA roots. The X-37 program started in 1999 with NASA, which initially planned to develop 2 separate vehicles, an approach and landing test vehicle and an orbital vehicle. But NASA transferred X-37 development to the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in 2004, at which point it became a classified program. In 2006, the Air Force announced it would develop its own X-37 vehicle, which it dubbed the X-37B, or OTV. The design of the spaceplane was based heavily on the original OV, which was never built. Boeing has been the primary contractor for the X-37B program dating back to its inception in 1999. To date, the company has apparently built 2 X-37B spaceplanes for the Air Force. 2 different vehicles have flown the program's 4 space missions. The missions are incredibly long. The Air Force's X-37B fact sheet states that the spaceplane is designed to spend up to 270 days in orbit at a time. However, the vehicle has already zoomed past that limit multiple times. The first X-37B mission, known as OTV-1, stayed aloft for just 225 days. But OTV-2 and OTV-3 lasted 469 days and 674 days, respectively. OTV-4 circled Earth for a record-shattering 718 days before it landed on May 7, 2017. This longevity may be a key part of the X-37B. After all, engineers testing technologies for future satellites want to see how this gear behaves in the space environment for long periods of time, experts have said. You can see it from the ground. Though the Air Force doesn't disclose the X-37B's precise orbit, keen-eyed amateur astronomers have managed to track the vehicle from the ground. The view won't be dramatic. The spaceplane usually looks like a star of middling brightness moving across the sky. Future versions might be coming. The current version of the X-37 may not be the last to reach space. In 2011, Boeing representatives announced that they were considering developing a larger variant called the X-37C, which could carry up to 6 astronauts to and from the International Space Station. In addition, an engineering team led by former NASA astronaut Stephen Robinson has proposed using a modified version of the X-37B as an ISS emergency evacuation vehicle, but this is just a concept at the moment, and there's no indication that Boeing is investigating this astronaut ambulance variant. Although the Air Force won't say what the X-37B's exact purpose is, there is enough known about its orbit and basic physics to estimate what this craft is and is not meant to do. Let's take the top 3 theories one by one. First, it's a space bomber. At one point, the Pentagon was funding development of a reusable hypersonic vehicle that was supposed to deliver munitions anywhere in the world within 2 hours. But that concept, called the Common Aero Vehicle, was suborbital. As a spaceplane, the X-37B would suffer from at least one major drawback as a bomber. Changing a spacecraft's orbital plane requires a great amount of thrust, so using something like the X-37B as a bomber would mean changing its orbit to fly over targets, and that would eat up its limited fuel supply, according to University of Maryland professor Mark Lewis, who once served as the Air Force's chief scientist. If I can't get my alleged bomber to the right location to release its bomb, what good is it? Lewis says. Second, it's a spy plane. This theory could be correct, though it depends what you think the X-37B is spying on. Earlier this year, the editor of Spaceflight magazine claimed the spaceplane was spying on the Chinese space station, noting that the orbit of the X-37B is close to that of the Tiangong. The theory got a lot of public attention, but Brian Whedon, a consultant with the Secure World Foundation, vigorously disputed it. Whedon, a former Air Force officer who worked at U.S. Strategic Command's Joint Space Operations Center, argues that the China spying theory ignores what is known as right ascension, a critical component of the spacecraft's orbit. The orbit of the X-37B crosses that of the Chinese space station only at 2 different points. It's not as though the spaceplane could keep a constant eye on Tiangong. Even though there may be a brief chance at some point for the X-37B to collect intelligence on the Chinese space station, that certainly is not the main mission, or even something all that feasible, he says. However, a group of civilian satellite spotters tracking the second X-37B, which is called OTV-2, have noted that the spaceplane's orbit takes it over countries including Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Whedon agrees that whatever secret payload the X-37B is carrying could indeed be used to capture data from those regions. Third, it's an experiment. Could the government be telling the truth? The Air Force has always maintained that the X-37B is simply an experimental platform for testing reusable space vehicle technologies and for operating experiments which can be returned to and examined on Earth. Whedon says he thinks that really is what the X-37B is doing. I think the primary mission is the test bed, he says. The X-37B is a good way for the Air Force to fly new technology such as sensors into space, test it, and then examine it back on Earth. Still, reconnaissance and research are not mutually exclusive. X-37B could be doing both. So, is all this secrecy really necessary? Stephen Aftergood, a secrecy expert at the Federation of American Scientists, says it's hard to know at the moment. But we do know from the history of previous black programs that such secrecy automatically incurs a significant financial cost, he says.